Listen to me. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack discipline in 3 areas. Their mouth, their mind. You want success? You want to level up? Then you better learn control. First, control your mouth. Some of you talk too much. You speak negativity over your own life. You say, I can't, I'm broke, I'm tired. Every time you say that, you're programming failure into your future. Winners speak differently. Winners say, I will find a way, I will win. And it's not just what you say, it's what you don't say. Stop gossiping. Stop complaining. Stop making excuses. Your mouth can build your future or destroy it. Second, control your mind. Your mind is a battlefield. Everyday doubt is fighting discipline. Fear is fighting faith. And most of you let your mind run wild. You wake up and scroll negativity. You listen to people who gave up on their own dreams. If you don't control your mind will control you. Feed it greatness. Protect it from garbage. Train it like a muscle. Because the same mind that tells you to quit can be trained to say keep going. Third, control your money. Some of you don't have a money problem. You have a discipline problem. You make money, but you don't manage money. You spend to impress people who don't care about you. You chase lifestyles instead of building stability. Wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about what you keep and grow. Control your spending. Control your habits. Make your money work for you, not against you. And hear me clearly. If you can control your mouth, your mind, you can control your life. Nobody can stop you. No situation can break you. But if you don't control them, they will control you. And that's why you're stuck. So today, not tomorrow, not next week, today, you take your power back. Your words are not just sounds that leave your mouth and disappear into the air. They are instructions you give to your brain, your behavior, and ultimately your life. Every sentence you speak carries weight, whether you realize it or not. When you constantly say things like, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, or nothing ever works out for me, you are not just expressing frustration. You are reinforcing a belief system that shapes your actions. Your actions hope. Over time, those repeated phrases become internal truths, and your mind starts to act in alignment with them. That's how people unknowingly trap themselves in cycles of failure. Not because they lack ability, but because their language keeps pulling them backward. Think about how often people speak negatively without even noticing it. It becomes automatic. Someone asks how they're doing, and they respond with, I'm tired, I'm stressed, or same old problems. These may feel like harmless expressions, but when repeated daily, they begin to define identity. If you keep saying you're tired, your body follows. If you keep saying life is hard, your mind stops looking for solution. Words condition your perspective, and your perspective controls your decision. That's why controlling your speech is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing language that empowers rather than weakens you. Positive speech is not about blind optimism or ignoring reality. It's about reframing reality in a way that gives you control. Instead of saying, I can't handle this, you say, this is tough, but I'll figure it out. The situation hasn't changed, but your mindset has. That shift matters because your brain responds differently. One statement shuts down effort. The other activates problem solving. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes, and eventually your default response to challenges turns from avoidance to action. Many people underestimate how much their environment influences their speed. If you are surrounded by individuals who constantly complain, criticize, or doubt, it becomes easy to adopt the same patterns. Language is contagious. You start mirroring what you hear. That's why controlling your mouth also means being aware of what you allow into your ears. If you consistently listen to negativity, it will eventually come out of you. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who speak with purpose, confidence, and clarity, you will begin to reflect that same energy. There's also a strong connection between self-talk and spoken words. What you say out loud often starts with what you say internally. If your inner dialogue is harsh, critical, and filled with doubt, it will show in your external communication. You might speak with hesitation, lack confidence, or unintentionally undermine yourself. Changing your spoken words requires changing your internal language first. You have to catch those silent thoughts that say you're not ready Or you're going to fail and replace them with something constructive like I'm learning or I'm improving every day. This is not easy at first, but it is necessary. Another important aspect of speaking positively is understanding the long-term impact of repetition. One positive statement might not seem powerful, but repeated daily, it becomes a belief. Just like negative repetition builds limitation, positive repetition builds confidence. If every morning you remind yourself that you are capable, disciplined, and focused, over time, your actions will start aligning with those statements. You will begin to take risks, push through discomfort, and pursue opportunities you once avoided. People often think that confidence comes before positive speech, but in reality, it works the other way around. You speak it before you fully feel it. You declare strength before it becomes visible. This is how you train your mind. Waiting until you feel confident to speak confidently is a mistake, because confidence is built through consistent behavior, not sudden realization. The words you choose are part of that behavior. There's also a responsibility that comes with how you speak to others. Your words don't just affect you, they influence the people around you. If you constantly speak negativity, you spread that mindset. If you speak encouragement, you uplift others. This creates a ripple effect. Imagine being someone whose words motivate, inspire, and bring clarity instead of doubt. That kind of communication builds stronger relationships and creates opportunities. People are naturally drawn to those who speak with purpose and positivity. At the same time, controlling your mouth means knowing when to stay silent. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Sometimes discipline is not about what you say, but what you choose not to say. Reacting emotionally, speaking out of anger, or expressing every negative thought can damage relationships and create unnecessary problems. Pausing before speaking gives you the chance to choose better words. That moment of control can change the outcome of a conversation completely. Another layer to this is accountability. When you speak your goals out loud, you create a sense of responsibility. Saying I want to be successful is vague, but saying I will improve my skills, work consistently, and achieve my goals creates a commitment. Your words become a promise, not just to others, but to yourself. This is why people who speak clearly about their intentions are more likely to follow through. They have already declared their direction. It's also important to recognize that positive speech does not mean avoiding truth. It means expressing truth in a constructive way. Instead of saying, I failed, I'm useless, you say, I failed, but I learned something valuable. Both statements acknowledge the same event, when one leads to growth, or the other leads to stagnation. The goal is not to deny mistakes, but to respond to them in a way that keeps you moving forward. Over time, as you become more aware of your word, you start to notice patterns. You realize when you're slipping into negativity. You catch yourself mid-sentence and adjust. This awareness is the first step toward mastery. It shows that you are no longer operating on autopilot. You are choosing your language intentionally. That level of control is powerful because it means you are shaping your mindset instead of being shaped by it. Consistency is key in this process. Changing the way you speak is not a one-day effort. It requires daily practice. There will be moments when you fall back into old habits, especially during stress or frustration. That's normal. The important thing is to correct yourself and keep going. Every time you choose a better word, a better phrase, you are strengthening a new habit. It's also worth noting that positive speech can influence your physical state. The words you use can affect your energy levels, posture, and overall presence. Speaking with confidence can make you feel more confident. Speaking with enthusiasm can increase your motivation. This mind-body connection is often overlooked, but it plays a significant role in performance and success. In professional settings, the way you speak can determine how others perceive you. Clear, confident, and positive communication can open doors, while negative or uncertain language can close them. People trust those who speak with clarity and purpose. They are more likely to follow, collaborate, and support someone who communicates effectively. This makes controlling your mouth not just a personal development skill, but a professional advantage. Another important factor is authenticity. Speaking positively does not mean being fake or exaggerating. It means being real while choosing words that reflect strength and possibility. People can sense when someone is genuine. Authentic positivity builds trust, while forced positivity can feel insincere. The goal is to align your words with your values and intention. As you continue to practice speaking positively, you will start to notice changes not just in your mindset, but in your results. Opportunities may appear where you once saw obstacles. Challenges may feel more manageable. Your confidence will grow and your ability to handle pressure will improve. This is not magic. It is the natural outcome of consistent, intentional communication. Ultimately, controlling your mouth is about taking ownership of your narrative. Instead of letting circumstances dictate your language, you decide how to respond. You become deliberate with your words. You speak in a way that supports your goals, strengthens your mindset, and influences your environment positively. This level of control is not something you are born with. It is something you develop through awareness, discipline, and repetition. Complaining feels natural because it gives immediate relief. When something goes wrong, expressing frustration seems like the easiest way to release tension. You talk about what's unfair, what's difficult, what's not working, and for a moment, it feels like you've done something about the problem. But in reality, you haven't solved anything. You've only reinforced the problem in your mind. The more you complain, the more your brain becomes wired to focus on what's wrong instead of what can be improved. Over time, this becomes a habit, and eventually it becomes part of your identity. What makes complaining so dangerous is that it disguises itself as awareness. People think that by pointing out problems, they are being realistic or observant. But there's a difference between recognizing an issue and dwelling on it. Recognition leads to action, while complaining leads to stagnation. When you constantly repeat what's wrong without taking steps to fix it, you trap yourself in a loop where nothing changes. Your energy is spent talking instead of doing, and that imbalance keeps you stuck. Complaining also has a subtle effect on your mindset. Every time you verbalize negativity, you strengthen neural pathways associated with stress, frustration, and helplessness. Your brain starts to expect problems and becomes less motivated to search for solutions. It's like training your mind to operate in survival mode instead of growth mode. Instead of asking, how can I fix this? You default to, why does this always happen to me? That shift in questioning changes everything, because one invites progress while the other reinforces limitation. Another issue with complaining is that it often exaggerates reality. When you repeatedly talk about a problem, it starts to feel bigger than it actually is. Small inconveniences turn into major obstacles in your mind. A minor setback becomes proof that everything is going wrong. This distortion makes it harder to think clearly and act effectively. You begin to see challenges as overwhelming even when they are manageable. This is how complaining weakens your mental resilience. It magnifies difficulties and minimizes your ability to handle them. There's also a social aspect of complaining that many people overlook. When you complain frequently, you influence the people around you. Negativity spreads quickly in conversation. One complaint leads to another, and before you know it, an entire discussion is centered around problems with no solutions. This kind of environment drains energy and lowers motivation. People start to feel stuck together instead of growing together. Over time, this can damage relationships because others may begin to associate you with negativity and avoid engaging with you. On the other hand, reducing complaints doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine. It means changing how you respond. Instead of expressing frustration repeatedly, you shift toward constructive thinking. You ask better questions. You focus on what can be controlled. You move from reaction to intention. This doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes your relationship with them. You become someone who deals with issues instead of someone who is defined by them. One of the reasons people struggle to stop complaining is that it has become automatic. It's part of daily conversation. People complain about traffic, weather, work, finances, and even minor inconveniences without thinking twice. Breaking this habit requires awareness. You have to notice when you're about to complain and pause. That pause creates a choice. You can either continue with the Pierre-Chennier or Krakowi pattern or redirect your response. At first, this feels unnatural. But with practice, it becomes easier. Replacing complaints with constructive language is a powerful strategy. Instead of saying, this is too hard, you can say, this is challenging, but I'll figure it out. Instead of a nothing ever works, you say, I need a different approach. These changes may seem small, but they have a significant impact on your mindset. They shift your focus from helplessness to possibility. Over time, this builds confidence because you start to see yourself as capable of handling difficulties. Complaining also affects your level of responsibility. When you complain, you often place blame on external factors, other people, circumstances, or situations beyond your control. While some things are genuinely outside your influence, constantly focusing on them removes your sense of agency. You start to feel powerless even when there are actions you could take. By reducing complaints, you naturally take more ownership. You begin to look at what you can do instead of what you can't change. Another important point is the emotional cost of complaining. Every complaint you make keeps you connected to a negative emotion. Instead of processing it and moving on, you revisit it repeatedly. This prolongs stress and can even intensify it. Over time, this can affect your overall mood and well-being. You may find yourself feeling more frustrated, less motivated, and more easily overwhelmed. Letting go of complaints helps break this cycle and create space for more positive emotions. It's also worth considering how complaining impacts your goals. If you spend a significant amount of time talking about what's wrong, you have less time and energy to focus on what you want to achieve. Complaints don't move you forward, they keep you in place. Progress requires action, and action requires focus. By reducing complaints, you free up mental and emotional resources that can be directed toward growth and improvement. There's a discipline involved in choosing not to complain, especially in difficult situations. It's easy to stay positive when things are going well, but the real test comes during challenges. This is where mindset matters most. Choosing not to complain doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means channeling them productively. You acknowledge frustration, but you don't let it control your response. You use it as motivation to find solutions instead of as an excuse to stay stuck. Another layer to this is gratitude. Complaining and gratitude cannot coexist in the same moment. When you focus on what you're thankful for, it becomes harder to dwell on what's wrong. This doesn't mean ignoring problems, but it balances your perspective. You start to see opportunities alongside challenges. This shift can significantly improve your outlook and resilience, making it easier to handle difficulties without falling into habitual complaining. In professional environments, excessive complaining can limit opportunities. People who are known for focusing on problems without offering solutions are often overlooked for leadership roles. On the other hand, those who approach challenges with a constructive mindset are seen as valuable contributors. They bring ideas, not just issues. This distinction can influence career growth, teamwork, and overall success. Breaking the habit of complaining also requires patience. It's not something that changes overnight. You may catch yourself complaining and feel frustrated about it, but that awareness is progress. Each time you recognize the pattern, you have an opportunity to improve. Over time, these small adjustments add up, and the habit begins to weaken. It's helpful to set personal standards for communication. Decide that you will not complain without offering a solution. If you feel the need to express a problem, follow it with a plan, or at least a step toward improvement. This keeps your focus on action rather than repetition. It also changes the way others perceive your communication, making it more purposeful and constructive. There's also strength in silence. Not every frustration needs to be spoken. Sometimes the best response is to process it internally and move forward. This doesn't mean ignoring emotion, but it means choosing when and how to express them. Controlled communication reflects discipline and maturity, which are essential for personal growth. As you reduce complaining, you may notice changes in your environment. Conversations become more productive. Relationships improve. You attract people who are focused on growth rather than negativity. This creates a positive cycle where your mindset influences your surroundings, and your surroundings reinforce your mindset. Ultimately, stopping complaining is about reclaiming control over your thoughts, words, and actions. It's about shifting from a passive response to an active approach. Instead of being overwhelmed by problems, you become someone who addresses them. This doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes how you experience them. You move from feeling stuck to feeling capable, from reacting to creating, from talking about problems to solving them. Gossip often feels harmless in the moment. It can even feel entertaining, like a way to connect with others, feel silence, or stay socially engaged. People talk about others' lives, decisions, mistakes, and personal matters as if it's normal conversation. But what seems like casual talk carries deeper consequences that most people don't immediately recognize. Gossip is not just about sharing information. It shapes your mindset, your character, and how others perceive you. At its core, gossip is a distraction. It pulls your attention away from your own life and places it on someone else's. Instead of focusing on your goals, your growth, and your responsibility, you spend time analyzing, judging, or discussing what others are doing. This shift in focus may seem small, but over time, it becomes a habit. You begin to invest mental energy in things that have no direct benefit to your progress. That energy could have been used to improve your skills, plan your next move, or solve your own challenges. One of the biggest problems with gossip is that it creates a false sense of productivity. When people engage in long conversations about others, it can feel like they are actively participating in something meaningful. In reality, nothing is being built. No solutions are being created. No goals are being advanced, and no real progress is being made. It's time spent in motion without direction. This illusion can be dangerous because it keeps people comfortable while they remain stagnant. Gossip also affects how you think about others. When you regularly talk about people's flaws, mistakes, or personal issues, your mind becomes conditioned to look for negativity. You start to notice what's wrong with people more than what's right. This mindset can spread into other areas of your life, making you more critical, less empathetic, and more focused on judgment rather than understanding. Over time, this can damage your relationships because people can sense when they are being evaluated instead of respected. Trust is another major factor. When you gossip about others, even casually, it sends a message to those around you. It tells them that you are willing to talk about people behind their backs. Even if they participate in the conversation, a part of them may wonder if you speak about them the same way when they are not present. This creates an invisible barrier in relationships. People may engage with you socially, but they may hesitate to trust you fully. Trust is built through consistency and integrity, and gossip weakens both. There's also a personal cost to engaging in gossip. When you speak negatively about others, it often reflects more about your mindset than the person you are discussing. It can indicate insecurity, comparison, or a need for validation. Instead of addressing your own challenges, you shift focus outward. This may provide temporary relief, but it doesn't solve anything. In fact, it can delay your growth because you avoid confronting what you need to improve in yourself. Another important aspect is the impact of gossip on your reputation. People may not always confront you about it, but they notice patterns. If you are known as someone who frequently discusses others, your credibility can be affected. In professional and personal settings, reputation matters. People respect those who are focused, disciplined, and respectful. Engaging in gossip can make you appear less serious, less trustworthy, and less committed to your own goals. Gossip also has a way of escalating. A small comment can turn into a longer discussion, which can then lead to assumptions, exaggerations, and sometimes even misinformation. As the conversation grows, the original truth can become distorted. This can harm the person being discussed, especially if false or incomplete information is spread. Even if the intention was not to cause harm, the outcome can still be negative. This is why controlling what you say about others is so important. There's also the emotional impact to consider. Conversations centered around gossip often carry a negative tone. Even if they start lightly, they can become critical or judgmental. Spending time in these kinds of discussions can affect your mood and energy. You may leave the conversation feeling drained or uneasy, even if you don't immediately realize it. Over time, this can contribute to a more negative overall mindset. Choosing not to gossip requires discipline and awareness. It means recognizing when a conversation is shifting in that direction and making a conscious decision to participate. This can be challenging, especially if gossip is common in your social circle. You may feel pressure to join in or worry about seeming disengaged. However, maintaining your standards is more important than fitting into a pattern that doesn't serve you. One effective approach is to redirect conversation. If someone brings up a topic that leans toward gossip, you can shift the focus to something more constructive. This doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be as simple as changing the subject, asking a different question, or steering the discussion toward ideas, goals, or neutral topics. Over time, people will begin to notice that you prefer more meaningful conversations. Another strategy is to limit the information you share about others. Even when discussing someone in a neutral or positive way, it's important to respect boundaries. Not everything needs to be shared. Being mindful of what you say helps build a habit of discretion, which strengthens trust and integrity. People will begin to see you as someone who can be trusted with information, which is a valuable quality in any setting. It's also helpful to reflect on why gossip can be appealing. Sometimes it provides a sense of connection. People bond over shared information, even if it's about others. Recognizing this can help you find healthier ways to connect. Instead of discussing people, you can build relationships through shared goals, experiences, and ideas. These types of connections are more meaningful and lasting. There's a strong link between focus and success, and gossip directly interferes with that focus. When your attention is scattered across other people's lives, you have less clarity about your own direction. Successful individuals tend to be highly selective about how they spend their time and energy. They prioritize activities that contribute to their growth and avoid those that don't. Reducing gossip is part of that discipline. It's also important to consider the long-term impact. Habits shape character, and character influences outcomes. If you consistently engage in gossip, it becomes part of how you communicate and interact. On the other hand, if you consistently avoid it, you develop a reputation for respect, focus, and integrity. These qualities can open doors, strengthen relationships, and create opportunity. Another layer to this is self-respect. When you choose not to engage in gossip, you are setting a standard for yourself. You are deciding that your time, energy, and attention are valuable. You are choosing to invest them in things that matter. This decision reinforces a sense of control and purpose, which is essential for personal development. It's also worth noting that avoiding gossip doesn't mean isolating yourself or avoiding conversation. It means being intentional about the kind of conversations you engage in. You can still be social, engaging and connected without discussing others in a negative or unnecessary way. In fact, this approach often leads to more meaningful and productive interactions. There may be moments when you slip into old habits. That's part of the process. The key is to recognize it and adjust. Awareness is the first step toward change. Each time you choose not to participate in gossip, you strengthen a new habit. Over time, this becomes your default behavior. As you distance yourself from gossip, you may also notice a shift in the people around you. Some may continue with the same patterns, while others may adapt to your approach. You may find yourself gravitating toward individuals who share similar values, those who are focused, respectful, and growth-oriented. This can create a more positive and supportive environment. Ultimately, avoiding gossip is about aligning your actions with your goals. If you want to grow, succeed, and build strong relationships, your communication needs to reflect that intent. Every conversation is an opportunity to either move forward or stay in place. By choosing to focus on meaningful, constructive topics, you ensure that your words contribute to your progress rather than distract from it. Speaking without thinking is one of the most common habits people carry, and it often goes unnoticed because it feels natural. Words come out quickly, reactions happen instantly, and conversations move fast. But the speed at which you speak can become a problem when it replaces intention. When you don't take time to think before you speak, you give control to impulse instead of awareness. That impulse is usually driven by emotion, anger, frustration, excitement, insecurity, and emotions. While valid, are not always reliable guides for communication. Every word you say has a consequence, even if it seems small. A careless comment can damage a relationship, create misunderstanding, or change how someone sees you. Once words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. You can apologize, you can explain, but you cannot erase the impact completely. This is why thinking before speaking is not just about being polite. It is about being responsible for the effect your words have on others and on your own life. One of the main reasons people fail to think before they speak is because they prioritize expression over understanding. They focus on getting their point across instead of making sure it is the right point, delivered in the right way. In conversations, especially during disagreements, this becomes more obvious. People interrupt, react defensively, and speak to win rather than to communicate. In those moments, thinking slows down and reaction takes over. This leads to statements that are often regretted later. Taking a moment to think before speaking creates a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where control exists. It may only be a few seconds, but it allows you to evaluate what you are about to say. Is it necessary? Is it accurate? Is it helpful? Is it respectful? These questions don't need to be asked consciously every time, but with practice, they become part of your communication instinct. You begin to filter your words naturally. Emotions play a major role in impulsive speech. When you are angry, your words tend to become sharper. When you are frustrated, they become harsher. When you are insecure, they may become defensive or exaggerated. The thinking before speaking does not mean suppressing these emotions. It means managing them. It means recognizing that what you feel in the moment does not have to dictate what you say. You can acknowledge your emotions internally while choosing a response that aligns with your values. Another important aspect is clarity. When you speak without thinking, your message can become unclear or inconsistent. You may say things you don't fully mean, or you may struggle to express your thoughts effectively. This can lead to confusion and misinterpretation. Taking a moment to organize your thoughts before speaking improves the quality of your communication. You become more precise, more coherent, and more impactful. Listening is closely connected to thinking before speaking. If you are focused only on what you want to say next, you are not fully listening. This limits your understanding of the conversation and increases the chances of responding inappropriately. When you truly listen, you give yourself better information to work with. This makes your response more relevant and thoughtful. It also shows respect to the other person, which strengthens communication. There is also a level of maturity involved in controlled speech. People who think before they speak are often perceived as more composed, reliable, and intelligent. This perception is not just about intelligence, about discipline. It shows that you are not controlled by every passing thought or emotion. You have the ability to pause, reflect, and choose your words carefully. This quality is valuable in both personal and professional settings. In many situations, especially conflicts, thinking before speaking can prevent escalation. Arguments often intensify because of reactive language. One harsh word leads to another, and the situation spirals. If one person pauses and chooses a calmer, more thoughtful response, it can change the direction of the entire interaction. This doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations, but it means handling them with control and intention. Silence can also be a powerful tool. Not every moment requires a response. Sometimes taking time to think means choosing not to speak immediately. This can feel uncomfortable, especially in fast-paced conversations, but it often leads to better outcomes. Silence gives you space to process, and it can also encourage others to reflect on what they've said. It shows that you are not reacting impulsively, which can shift the tone of the interaction. Another challenge people face is the fear of being misunderstood or overlooked, which can lead to speaking quickly without thinking. They feel the need to respond immediately to maintain presence in the conversation. However, speaking thoughtfully often has a stronger impact than speaking quickly. People remember clarity and purpose more than speed. Taking a moment to think does not weaken your voice. It strengthens it. In professional environments, thinking before speaking is especially important. Words can influence decisions, relationships, and opportunities. A poorly thought out comment can affect how colleagues or leaders perceive you. On the other hand, well-considered communication can build credibility and trust. It shows that you are deliberate, focused, and aware of your impact. There is also a connection between thinking before speaking and self-awareness. When you are aware of your thoughts, emotions, and patterns, you are better equipped to control your responses. You begin to notice triggers, situations that make you react quickly or emotionally. With this awareness, you can prepare yourself to respond differently. You can anticipate moments where you need to slow down and be more intentional. Practicing this skill requires consistency. It starts with small steps. You may begin by pausing for a second before responding in conversations. Over time, this pause becomes more natural. You start to feel when you are about to speak impulsively, and you catch yourself. This process is gradual, but each moment of awareness strengthens your control. It's also important to understand that thinking before speaking does not mean overthinking. The goal is not to become hesitant or overly cautious, but to find a balance between spontaneity and intention. You want your words to flow naturally, but with a level of awareness that ensures they are aligned with your values and goals. This balance allows you to communicate effectively without losing authenticity. Another benefit of thinking before speaking is that it helps you avoid unnecessary conflict and regret. Many people look back on conversations and wish they had said something differently or not said something at all. By developing the habit of pausing and reflecting, you reduce these moments. You become more confident in your communication because you know your words are chosen, not accidental. This habit also influences how others respond to you. When you speak thoughtfully, people are more likely to listen. Your words carry weight because they are not constant or careless. You create a sense of presence in conversation. Instead of filling space with words, you contribute meaningfully. This makes your communication more effective and impactful. Over time, thinking before speaking becomes part of your identity. It is no longer something you have to remind yourself to do. It becomes automatic. You develop a reputation for being calm, clear, and intentional. People trust your words because they know you don't speak without consideration. This trust is valuable in every area of life. Ultimately, this practice is about control and awareness. It is about recognizing that your words are powerful and choosing to use that power responsibly. It is about slowing down just enough to ensure that what you say reflects who you are and what you stand for. In a world where communication is often fast and reactive, the ability to think before speaking sets you apart. It allows you to navigate conversations with clarity, handle challenges with composure, and build stronger, more meaningful connections through the way you express yourself. Your mind is constantly being influenced, whether you realize it or not. Every conversation you listen to, every video you watch, every piece of content you scroll through, and every person you spend time with is shaping your thoughts. This influence is not always obvious, but it is always present. Over time, what you consistently expose yourself to becomes the foundation of how you think, how you feel, and how you act. That's why protecting your mental environment is not optional if you want growth. It's necessary. Most people are very careful about what they eat, what they wear, or how they present themselves. But they are careless about what they allow into their minds. They consume negativity without questioning. They listen to people who constantly complain, doubt, and criticize. They scroll through content that promotes comparison, fear, or distraction. And then they wonder why they feel unmotivated, anxious, or stuck. The truth is, your mind cannot produce positivity if it is constantly fed negativity. Your mental environment works like a filter. Now, whatever goes in eventually comes out. If you fill your mind with doubt, fear, and distractions, your thoughts will reflect that. Your decisions will reflect that. Your actions will reflect that. On the other hand, if you consistently feed your mind with clarity, discipline, and purpose, your behavior will begin to align with those inputs. This is not about perfection, it's about direction. The overall pattern of what you consume matters more than occasional exposure. One of the biggest challenges today is the amount of information available. You are constantly surrounded by content, and not all of it is beneficial. In fact, much of it is designed to capture attention rather than add value. It's easy to fall into the habit of consuming whatever appears in front of you without thinking about its impact. This passive consumption weakens your control. You become reactive instead of intentional. Protecting your mental environment requires you to shift from passive consumption to active selection. This means asking yourself simple but important questions. Is this helping me grow? Is this adding value to my life? To my aligning with who I want to become? If the answer is no, then it may not be worth your attention. This doesn't mean you have to avoid all entertainment or relaxation, but it means being aware of the balance. Too much low-value input can crowd out the space needed for meaningful thought and development. The people you surround yourself with play a major role in your mental environment. Conversations shape thinking. If you are constantly around individuals who focus on problems, make excuses, or limit themselves, it becomes harder to maintain a growth-oriented mindset. Their language, attitudes, and beliefs can influence you more than you expect. This doesn't mean you need to cut people off immediately, but it does mean being aware of the impact they have on you. At the same time, seeking out positive and driven individuals can elevate your thinking. When you engage with people who are focused, disciplined, and motivated, you naturally begin to adopt similar patterns. Their conversations challenge you, their actions inspire you, and their mindset pushes you forward. This kind of environment supports growth rather than holding it back. Protecting your mental environment also involves setting boundaries. Not every conversation needs your participation. Not every piece of information deserves your attention. You have the right to limit exposure to negativity, even if it is common or socially accepted. This might mean reducing time spent in certain discussions, limiting social media usage, or being selective about what you watch and listen to. These decisions may seem small, but they have a significant cumulative effect. Another important aspect is internal awareness. External influences are powerful, but your internal response matters just as much. You can be exposed to negative situations and still maintain control over how you interpret them. This requires conscious effort. It means recognizing when something is affecting your mindset and choosing how to respond. Instead of absorbing everything automatically, you evaluate it. You decide what to accept and what to reject. This process is similar to building a filter. Not everything that enters your awareness should become part of your belief system. Some things should be questioned, some should be ignored, and some should be challenged. Developing this filter takes time, but it strengthens your independence. You are no longer easily influenced by every opinion or trend. You become more grounded in your own thinking. There's also a connection between your mental environment and your focus. When your mind is cluttered with unnecessary information, it becomes harder to concentrate. You may find yourself distracted, jumping from one thought to another, unable to stay consistent with your goals. Reducing mental clutter improves clarity. It allows you to direct your attention toward what truly matters. Silence and solitude can play an important role in this process. Constant noise, whether from conversations or media, can overwhelm your mind. Taking time to step away from external input gives you space to think, reflect, and reset. This is where clarity often emerges. It allows you to process your thoughts without interfering and reconnect with your priority. Another factor to consider is emotional influence. Certain environments or types of content can trigger specific emotions: fear, anger, jealousy, or insecurity. If you are constantly exposed to these triggers, your emotional state can become unstable. Protecting your mental environment means being aware of what affects you emotionally and managing your exposure accordingly. This helps maintain a more balanced and stable mindset. Consistency is key in maintaining a healthy mental environment. It's not about making one good decision and expecting lasting results. It's about making small, intentional choices every day. Choosing what to watch, what to listen to, who to spend time with, and what to focus on. These decisions accumulate over time and shape your overall mindset. It's also important to recognize that protecting your mental environment is not about isolation. It's about intention. You can still engage with the world, stay informed, and interact with different perspectives, but you do so with awareness. You are not passively absorbing everything. You are actively choosing what aligns with your goals and values. There will be situations where you cannot control your environment completely. You may encounter negativity at work, in public spaces, or even within your personal circle. In these cases, your internal control becomes even more important. You focus on what you can manage, your thoughts, your reactions, and your boundaries. You don't let temporary exposure become permanent influence. Over time, as you become more intentional about your mental environment, you will notice changes in your thinking. You may feel more focused, more motivated, and more in control. Your decisions may become clearer and your actions more consistent. This is not a sudden transformation, but a gradual shift that comes from consistent effort. Your mental environment also affects your confidence. When you are surrounded by negativity or constantly consuming content that creates doubt, your confidence can decrease. On the other hand, when you expose yourself to positive, growth-oriented input, your confidence increases. You start to believe in your ability to improve and succeed. Another benefit is improved decision-making. A clear and focused mind is better equipped to evaluate options and make effective choices. When your mental environment is cluttered or negative, your judgment can be influenced by emotions or distractions. By protecting your mind, you create conditions for better thinking and better outcomes. This practice also strengthens discipline. Choosing what to allow into your mind requires effort, especially when distractions are easily accessible. Every time you make a conscious decision to protect your mental environment, you reinforce self-control. This discipline extends into other areas of your life, supporting overall growth. As you continue to develop this habit, it becomes easier to recognize what supports you and what doesn't. You become more selective, not out of fear, but out of purpose. You understand that your time, attention, and energy are valuable, and you choose to invest them wisely. Ultimately, protecting your mental environment is about taking responsibility for your thoughts and your future. It is about recognizing that what you allow into your mind shapes who you become. By being intentional, setting boundaries, and maintaining awareness, you create a space where growth is possible. You give yourself the best chance to think clearly, act effectively, and move consistently toward your goals. What you feed your mind determines what your mind produces. Just like your body reflects the quality of the food you consume, your thinking reflects the quality of the information you take in daily. If your mental diet is filled with distraction, negativity, and shallow content, your thoughts will struggle to go deep, stay focused, or produce meaningful ideas. On the other hand, when you intentionally feed your mind with growth-oriented material, books, learning, and valuable knowledge, you begin to think differently, act differently, and ultimately live differently. Reading and learning are not just activities. They are tools for transformation. Every book you read introduces you to new perspectives, new strategies, and new ways of thinking. It allows you to learn from experiences that are not your own, saving you time and helping you avoid unnecessary mistakes. Instead of relying only on trial and error, you gain access to the lessons of people who have already walked the path you are trying to take. This accelerates your growth in a way that random experience alone cannot. Many people underestimate the long-term inconsistent learning. They may read occasionally or watch educational content once in a while, but they don't make it a habit. Problem with this approach is that growth requires consistency. Just like going to the gym once will not transform your body, consuming valuable knowledge occasionally will not significantly change your mindset. It's the daily repetition that creates lasting results. Even small amounts of focused learning each day can compound over time into significant improvement. One of the key benefits of feeding your mind with quality content is clarity. When you expose yourself to well-structured ideas and thoughtful insights, your own thinking becomes more organized. You begin to see patterns, understand cause and effect, and make connections between different areas of knowledge. This clarity helps you make better decisions, solve problems more effectively, and approach challenges with confidence. Another important aspect is perspective. Without intentional learning, your understanding of the world is limited to your immediate experiences and environment. This can create a narrow view, making it harder to adapt or grow. Books and educational content expand that view. They introduce you to different cultures, industries, philosophies, and ways of thinking. This broader perspective makes you more adaptable and open-minded, which is essential in a constantly changing world. Feeding your mind with growth also strengthens your ability to focus. In a world filled with distractions, maintaining concentration has become increasingly difficult. Short-form content, constant notifications, and endless scrolling train your brain to seek quick stimulation rather than sustained attention. Reading and deep learning require the opposite. They train your brain to stay engaged, process information, and think critically. Over time, this improves your ability to concentrate on tasks that require effort and discipline. There is also a strong connection between learning and confidence. When you understand something deeply, you naturally feel more confident discussing it, applying it, and building on it. This confidence is not based on guesswork. It is grounded in knowledge. As you continue to learn, you build a foundation that supports your actions. You are no longer acting blindly. You are acting with understanding. It's important to recognize that not all information is equal. Feeding your mind with growth means being selective about what you consume. There's a difference between content that entertains and content that educates. While entertainment has its place, it should not dominate your mental diet. If most of your input is designed to distract rather than develop you, your growth will be limited. Being intentional about your choices ensures that your time and attention are used effectively. Another factor to consider is application. Learning without application has limited value. It's not enough to read books or watch educational content. You need to apply what you learn. This is where real growth happens. When you take an idea and implement it in your life, you move from knowledge to skill. This process may involve trial and error, but it solidifies your understanding and makes the learning meaningful. Consistency in learning also builds discipline. Setting aside time each day to read, study, or improve yourself requires commitment. It's easy to skip when you don't feel like it, but maintaining the habit strengthens your ability to follow through. This discipline extends beyond learning and influences other areas of your life, making it easier to stay consistent with your goals. Your environment plays a role in how effectively you feed your mind. If you are constantly surrounded by distractions, it becomes harder to focus on meaningful learning. Creating a space or routine that supports concentration can make a significant difference. This might involve setting specific times for reading, reducing interruptions, or choosing environments that encourage focus. Another important aspect is curiosity. Feeding your mind with growth is not just about discipline. It's also about interest. When you are curious, learning becomes more engaging and enjoyable. You start asking questions, exploring topics, and seeking deeper understanding. This natural interest fuels consistency because you are not forcing yourself to learn. You want to learn. There is also a long-term impact on how you communicate. As you expose yourself to well-articulated ideas and structured thinking, your ability to express yourself improves. You gain vocabulary, clarity, and confidence in your communication. This can enhance your interactions, whether in personal conversations or a professional setting. Learning also helps you adapt to change. In a rapidly evolving world, the ability to learn and update your knowledge is crucial. Those who stop learning risk becoming outdated, while those who continue to grow remain relevant. Feeding your mind with new information allows you to adjust, innovate, and stay ahead. It's also important to balance consumption with reflection. Simply taking in information without processing it can lead to overload. Taking time to think about what you've learned, how it applies to your life, and how it connects to other ideas deepens your understanding. Reflection turns information into insight. Another benefit is problem solving. When your mind is filled with diverse knowledge, you have more tools to draw from when facing challenges. You can approach problems from different angles, consider multiple solutions, and make more informed decisions. This ability becomes increasingly valuable as you take on more complex responsibilities. Feeding your mind with growth also influences your habits. The more you expose yourself to positive, disciplined, and focused ideas, the more likely you are to adopt similar behaviors. You begin to align your actions with the principles you learn. This alignment creates consistency, which is key to long-term success. It's worth noting that progress in this area may feel slow at first. You may not see immediate results from reading a book or learning a new concept. However, the impact accumulates over time. Each piece of knowledge adds to your foundation, and eventually you reach a point where the difference becomes noticeable. Your thinking improves, your decisions become clearer, and your actions become more effective. There will be moments when motivation is low and learning feels like a chore. This is where discipline becomes important. You continue the habit even when it's not exciting because you understand its value. Over time, this consistency builds momentum, making it easier to maintain the routine. It's also helpful to track your learning. This doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as knowing what you've read, what you've learned, or how you've applied it. This creates a sense of progress and reinforces the habit. It also allows you to revisit ideas and build on them. Another layer to this is sharing knowledge. When you discuss what you've learned with others, you reinforce your understanding. Teaching or explaining concepts helps you process them more deeply. It also creates opportunity for feedback and new perspectives. Ultimately, feeding your mind with growth is about taking control of your development. It is about recognizing that your thoughts shape your actions, and your actions shape your results. By consistently choosing to learn, you invest in your future. You build a mindset that is focused, adaptable, and capable of handling challenges. This investment may not always show immediate returns, but over time, it creates a strong foundation for success and continuous improvement. Your thoughts are not random occurrences that you have no control over. They are patterns that can be trained, shaped, and directed over time. Most people live as if their thoughts simply happen to them, reacting to whatever comes into their Arabic noon without questioning it. One moment they feel motivated, the next they feel doubtful, then distracted, then overwhelmed. This inconsistency is not because the mind is uncontrollable, but because it has never been trained. Just like the body becomes stronger with exercise, the mind becomes disciplined with intentional practice. Every day your mind is producing thousands of thoughts. Some are useful, some are neutral, and many are unproductive. If you don't develop the ability to guide these thoughts, they begin to guide you. You may start your day with a plan, but a single negative thought can shift your entire mood. That thought turns into more thoughts, and before you realize it, your focus is gone. This is how lack of mental discipline leads to inconsistency. It's not that you don't know what to do. It's that your thinking keeps pulling you away from doing it. Training your thoughts daily means becoming aware of what is happening inside your mind. Awareness is the first step. That you cannot control what you don't notice. When a negative or distracting thought appears, most people immediately engage with it. They start building on it, analyzing it, or reacting emotionally. Instead, discipline requires you to observe it first. You recognize the thought without immediately accepting it as true. This small shift creates space between you and the thought, allowing you to decide how to respond. One of the most important aspects of mental discipline is understanding that not every thought deserves attention. Just because something crosses your mind does not mean it is valid or useful. Some thoughts are based on fear, past experiences, or assumptions that are not relevant to your current situation. If you treat every thought as important, your mind becomes cluttered and unfocused. Learning to filter your thoughts helps you prioritize what actually matters. Consistency plays a major role in this process. Training your thoughts is not something you do once and achieve permanent control. It requires daily effort. Just like physical training, the effects build over time. Some days will feel easier than others, and there'll be moments when your mind drifts back into old patterns. This is normal. The goal is not perfection, but progress. Each time you redirect your thoughts, you strengthen your ability to do it again. Another key element is replacing unproductive thoughts with constructive ones. It's not enough to simply stop a negative thought. You need to provide an alternative. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, I can't handle this, you can replace it with, this is challenging, but I can work through it step by step. This doesn't ignore the difficulty, but it changes your approach. Over time, these replacements become more natural, and your default thinking pattern shifts. Your environment can influence your thoughts, but it does not have to control them. You may encounter negativity, stress, or uncertainty in your surroundings, but your response is still within your control. Training your thoughts means maintaining a level of stability regardless of external conditions. This doesn't mean ignoring reality, but it means choosing how you interpret and respond to it. Focus is another area that benefits from disciplined thinking. In a world filled with distractions, maintaining attention has become increasingly difficult. Your mind is constantly pulled in different directions by notifications, conversations, and external stimuli. Without training, it becomes easy to lose track of your priorities. By practicing mental discipline, you learn to bring your focus back whenever it drifts. This ability is essential for productivity and achieving long-term goals. Emotions are closely tied to thoughts, and managing one helps manage the other. When you control your thinking, you influence how you feel. For example, if you continuously think about worst-case scenarios, your anxiety increases. If you focus on solutions and possibility, your confidence improves. This connection highlights the importance of directing your thoughts intentionally. It's not about eliminating emotions, but about guiding them through your thinking patterns. Another important factor is patience. Training your thoughts takes time, and the results may not be immediately visible. You may still experience negative thoughts, distractions, or moments of doubt. The difference is in how you handle them. Instead of being overwhelmed, you begin to manage them more effectively. This gradual improvement builds resilience and strengthens your mindset. Reflection can support this process. Taking time to review your day, your decisions, and your thinking patterns helps you identify areas for improvement. You may notice recurrent thoughts that hold you back or patterns that lead to distraction. Recognizing these patterns allows you to address them more directly. Reflection turns experience into learning, which accelerates growth. It's also helpful to set clear intentions for your thinking. Instead of letting your mind wander aimlessly, you decide what you want to focus on. This could be your goals, your tasks for the day, or specific problems you need to solve. Having a clear direction makes it easier to guide your thoughts and reduces the likelihood of getting lost in distractions. Discipline in thinking also improves decision-making. When your mind is clear and focused, you can evaluate options more effectively. You are less likely to be influenced by temporary emotions or external pressure. This leads to better choices and more consistent results. Over time, this builds confidence in your ability to handle complex situations. Another benefit is increased self-control. When you train your thoughts, you become less reactive. You don't immediately respond to every impulse or emotion. Instead, you pause, evaluate, and choose your response. This level of control is valuable in both personal and professional settings where impulsive decisions can have significant consequences. There is also a connection between disciplined thinking and long-term vision. When your mind is trained, it becomes easier to stay aligned with your goals. You are less likely to be distracted by short-term temptations or setbacks. You maintain a clearer sense of direction, which helps you stay consistent over time. Training your thoughts daily also enhances your ability to handle stress. When challenges arise, a disciplined mind is better equipped to stay calm and focused. Instead of reacting with panic or frustration, you approach the situation with a problem-solving mindset. This reduces the impact of stress and allows you to respond more effectively. It's important to recognize that this process is personal. Different strategies work for different people. Some may benefit from writing their thoughts down, others from meditation or quiet reflection. The key is finding methods that help you become more aware and intentional. The goal is not to follow a specific technique, but to develop control over your thinking. Another aspect to consider is persistence. There will be moments when it feels like your efforts are not working. You may fall back into old patterns or struggle to maintain focus. This is part of the process. Progress is not always linear. What matters is your willingness to continue. Each effort contributes to your overall development, even if the results are not immediately visible. As you continue to train your thoughts, you will notice changes in how you approach situations. You may become more patient, more focused, and more resilient. Your reactions become more controlled, and your decisions more intentional. This transformation does not happen overnight, but it becomes evident over time. Ultimately, training your thoughts daily is about taking responsibility for your mental state. It is about recognizing that your mind is not something that should be left unmanaged. By developing awareness, Practicing consistency and choosing your thoughts intentionally, you create a foundation for growth. This foundation supports every other area of your life, allowing you to act with clarity, maintain focus, and move steadily toward your goals. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that controls human behavior. It doesn't always show itself as something dramatic or obvious. Most of the time, it appears quietly in the form of hesitation, overthinking, delay, or avoidance. You may not even realize that fear is what is stopping you. Instead, it disguises itself as I'm not ready yet. Or I'll do it later, or I'll do it later, or I'll try. But underneath all of that is the same thing. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort, or fear of the unknown. The problem with fear is not that it exists. Fear is natural. It is part of human survival. It is designed to protect you from danger. But in modern life, fear rarely shows up in situations of physical danger. Instead, it shows up when you are trying to grow, trying to take risks, trying to step into something unfamiliar. And if you let fear lead in those moments, it doesn't protect you. It limits you. It limits you. It keeps you in the same place, repeating the same patterns, watching opportunities pass by while you wait for the perfect moment that never comes. One of the most common ways fear controls people is through delay. You feel the urge to start something, do a project, a business, a skill, or a goal, but instead of acting, you postpone it. You tell yourself you will start tomorrow. Then tomorrow becomes next week, next month, or next year. The intention is still there, but action never follows. Over time, that delay becomes regret. Not because you lacked ability, but because fear quietly convinced you to wait instead of move. Fear also grows stronger when it is left unchallenged. The longer you avoid something, the bigger it becomes in your mind. What was once a small task starts to feel overwhelming. What was once a simple conversation starts to feel intimidating. Your imagination begins to exaggerate the difficulty, and suddenly the task feels heavier than it actually is. In reality, nothing changed except your perception. And perception is shaped by repetition. The more you avoid, the more powerful fear becomes. Replacing fear with action means breaking this cycle. It means refusing to let hesitation make decisions for you. It doesn't mean you stop feeling fear. It means you stop obeying it. There is a huge difference between experiencing fear and being controlled by fear. One is a feeling, the other is a choice. You may feel nervous, uncertain, or uncomfortable, but you still move. You still take the step, you still begin. Action is the only real antidote to fear. Thinking does not eliminate fear. Waiting does not eliminate fear. Overanalyzing does not eliminate fear. In fact, too much thinking often strengthens fear because it gives it more space to grow. The more you imagine what could go wrong, the more real those imagined problems feel. But when you act, something powerful happens. Clarity replaces confusion. The unknown becomes known. The imagined fear loses its grip because reality takes its place. Most people wait for confidence before they act, but confidence is not something that appears first. Confidence is built through action. It is created in motion. You don't become confident and start. You start and then become confident. Every step you take, even a small one, weakens fear and strengthens belief. The first attempt may feel uncomfortable, but the second feels slightly easier, and the third even more manageable. This is how momentum is created. Fear often presents itself as logic. It sounds reasonable. It tells you to prepare more, to wait for better timing, to avoid unnecessary risk. But many of these illogical arguments are just fear in disguise. Preparation is important, but endless preparation becomes avoidant. Planning is useful, but over-planning becomes delay. The key is recognizing when preparation turns into procrastination. If you are constantly preparing but never executing, fear is already in control. Another way fear operates is through comparison. You look at others who are ahead of you and convince yourself that you are not good enough yet. You see their results but not their process. You see their success but not their struggle. And instead of using their example as motivation, you use it as a reason to doubt yourself. This comparison feeds fear because it makes your starting point feel insignificant. But every successful person once stood exactly where you are at the beginning, unsure, inexperienced, but willing to move forward anyway. Replacing fear with action requires a shift in identity. You stop identifying as someone who waits and start identifying as someone who acts. This identity shift is powerful because it changes how you respond automatically. Instead of asking, am I ready? You start asking, what can I do right now? And that question removes pressure and replaces it with movement. It brings your focus back to the present instead of the imagined future. One of the most effective ways to overcome fear is to shrink the task. Fear grows when things feel too big or overwhelming. But when you break something down into the smallest possible step, it becomes easier to start. You don't focus on completing the entire journey. You focus on the first move. That first move creates momentum, and momentum reduces fear. Once you begin, the hardest part is already behind you. Fear also weakens when you expose yourself to it repeatedly. The first time you do something uncomfortable, it feels intense. The second time, slightly less. The third time, even less. This is how growth works. Repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity reduces fear. What once felt impossible becomes normal through consistent action. Avoidance keeps fear alive, but repetition dissolves. There's also a mental shift that happens when you choose action over fear. You begin to trust yourself more. Every time you act despite fear, you prove to yourself that fear is not in control. That self-trust becomes stronger over time. You stop doubting your ability to handle challenges because you have evidence that you can. This internal proof is more powerful than any external reassurance. Fear often focuses on outcomes, but action focuses on process. Fear asks, what if I fail? Action asks, what can I do next? Fear looks at the end result before starting. Action focuses on the present step. This shift in attention is critical because outcomes are uncertain, but actions are controllable. When you focus on what you can control, fear loses influence. It's also important to understand that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. Fear often comes from the belief that failure is final or defining, but in reality, failure is information. It shows you what doesn't work, what needs improvement, and what direction to adjust. When you stop seeing failure as a threat and start seeing it as feedback, fear begins to lose its power. In many cases, fear is not about the task itself, but about identity. You fear what failure might say about you. You worry about how others will perceive you if things don't go well. But most people are not focused on your mistakes as much as you imagine. And even if they are, their opinions do not determine your future. What matters more is your willingness to continue despite discomfort. Replacing fear with action also builds resilience. Life will always present uncertainty, but your response determines your growth. When you consistently act in the presence of fear, you become mentally stronger. You stop being easily shaken by challenges. You develop the ability to move forward even when things are not perfect. This resilience becomes a foundation for long-term success. There will still be moments when fear returns. That is normal. The goal is not to eliminate fear completely, but to reduce its control over your decision. Each time you choose action, you weaken fear's influence. Each time you delay, you strengthen it. This simple pattern determines whether you grow or stay stuck. Over time, action becomes your default response. Instead of analyzing every possible outcome, you begin to move first and adjust along the way. This approach creates learning through experience rather than imagination. You stop living in the mental version of fear and start dealing with real situations, which are almost always more manageable than expected. Ultimately, replacing fear with action is about reclaiming control over your life. It is about refusing to let hesitation dictate your direction. It is about choosing movement over stagnation, experience over assumption, and progress over perfection. When action becomes your habit, fear no longer has the same authority over you. It may still appear, but it no longer decides your path. Your focus is one of the most valuable assets you have, yet it's also one of the easiest things to lose. In a world filled with constant stimulation, distractions are everywhere. Notifications, social media, conversations, entertainment, and even your own thoughts compete for your attention every second of the day. If you do not consciously protect and direct your focus, it gets scattered. And when your focus is scattered, your progress becomes scattered as well. You may feel busy, but not productive. You may feel active, but not advancing. That difference comes down to where your attention is placed. Focus is not just about paying attention. It's about choosing what deserves your attention and ignoring what does not. Most people do not fail because they lack ability, but because they lack sustained concentration on what matters. They start one task, get distracted, switch to another, and repeat the cycle. Over time, this creates the illusion of effort without real results. So, true progress requires depth, not just activity. Depth comes from sustained focus over time. One of the biggest challenges to focus today is instant gratification. The brain is constantly being trained to expect quick rewards. Short videos, rapid content changes, and endless scrolling create a habit of seeking stimulation without effort. This weakens your ability to stay with one task for long periods. When you try to focus on something important that requires time and patience, your mind resists. It starts looking for escape routes, anything easier, faster, or more entertaining. This resistance is not a lack of discipline alone, it is conditioning. To regain control of your focus, you have to retrain your mind. This begins with awareness. You need to notice when your attention is drifting. Most distractions do not happen suddenly. They happen gradually. You start working on something, then check your phone just for a second. Then return, then get distracted again. Each interruption breaks your mental flow. Over time, your brain becomes accustomed to this pattern, making deep focus more difficult. Awareness interrupts this cycle. Once you become aware, the next step is intention. Instead of allowing your attention to move randomly, you direct it deliberately. Before starting a task, you decide what you are going to focus on and for how long. This simple structure creates boundaries for your attention. Without boundaries, your mind will wander naturally toward whatever is easiest or most stimulating. With boundaries, you regain control. Distractions are not always external. Many of them are internal. Your thoughts can pull you away from what you are doing just as easily as notifications can. You may start thinking about unrelated problems, future worries, or past experiences while trying to focus on the present task. This internal distraction is often more powerful than external noise because it feels like your own thinking. Training focus means learning to gently bring your attention back every time it drifts without frustration or judgment. Another important factor is environment. Your surroundings play a major role in how well you can concentrate. A cluttered or noisy environment makes focus harder. Constant interruptions break your mental rhythm. Creating a space that supports concentration helps reduce unnecessary friction. This might mean organizing your workspace, reducing digital distractions, or setting specific times for focused work. The goal is to make focus easier, not harder. Focus also requires discipline. It's not always enjoyable to stay with one task, especially when it feels difficult or slow. Your mind naturally wants variety and stimulation. Discipline is what keeps you engaged even when motivation fades. It is the ability to stay with the task, not because it is exciting, but because it is important. This ability is what separates long-term progress from short-term effort. Another key element of focus is patience. Real results take time, and focus is the tool that allows you to stay committed long enough to see them. Many people lose focus because they expect immediate outcomes. When results do not appear quickly, their attention shifts elsewhere. This constant shifting prevents depth. Patience allows you to stay with the process long enough for progress to become visible. Multitasking is often misunderstood as efficiency, but in reality, it reduces focus. When you divide your attention between multiple tasks, each task receives less quality input. Your mind is not designed to fully concentrate on several complex activities at once. Instead of doing many things well, multitasking often leads to doing many things poorly. Focus, on the other hand, allows you to fully engage with one task, leading to higher quality results. Another challenge to focus is emotional interference. Your emotions can disrupt concentration without warning. Stress, frustration, or excitement can pull your attention away from what you are doing. When emotions are high, your mind seeks relief or distraction. Learning to manage your emotional state helps protect your focus. This does not mean ignoring emotions, but recognizing them without letting them take control of your attention. Focus also improves when you have clarity of purpose. When you are unsure of why you are doing something, your attention easily drifts. But when your goal is clear, Your mind has direction. You are less likely to get distracted because you understand the importance of what you are working on. Clarity acts like a filter that helps you prioritize your attention. Another powerful way to strengthen focus is through practice. Focus is not a fixed trait. It is a skill. Like any skill, it improves with repetition. The more you practice concentrating on one task, the stronger your ability becomes. At first, it may feel difficult to stay focused for even a short period. But with consistent effort, your capacity increases. You train your mind to stay present for longer durations. Breaks also play an important role in maintaining focus. The mind cannot sustain deep concentration indefinitely. Without rest, attention weakens and productivity declines. Structured breaks allow your mind to reset so you can return to your task with renewed clarity. The key is intentional rest, not random distraction. A break should refresh your mind, not pull you into endless diversion. Another important aspect of focus is resisting impulse. Many distractions come from sudden urges to check your phone, to switch tasks, to respond immediately. These impulses are temporary, but if you act on them every time, your focus becomes fragmented. Learning to pause before reacting helps you regain control. You begin to separate impulse from action. Over time, improving your focus leads to deeper thinking. Instead of surface-level understanding, you begin to engage more deeply with ideas, problems, and tasks. This depth allows you to produce higher quality work and make better decisions. It also enhances your learning ability because focused attention improves memory and comprehension. Focus also builds momentum. When you stay concentrated on one task for a sustained period, progress becomes visible. That progress motivates you to continue. Each step completed reinforces your commitment. This creates a cycle where focus leads to progress and progress strengthens focus. One of the most overlooked benefits of focus is peace of mind. A scattered mind feels chaotic and restless. Constant switching between tasks and thoughts creates mental fatigue. Focus simplifies your mental space. It reduces noise and brings clarity. When your attention is fully engaged in one thing, your mind becomes calmer and more stable. There will always be distractions around you, but your power lies in your response to them. You cannot eliminate all distractions, but you can control how much attention you give them. Every time you choose to return to your task, you strengthen your ability to focus. Every time you give in to distraction, you weaken it slightly. This constant choice shapes your mental discipline over time. Ultimately, focus is about control over your attention. It's about deciding what deserves your mental energy and protecting it from unnecessary interruption. When you develop this ability, your productivity increases, your thinking becomes clearer, and your progress becomes more consistent. Focus turns scattered effort into meaningful achievement and transforms intention into real results through sustained attention and disciplined action. Time is the one resource you cannot pause, store, or recover once it is lost. Money can be earned again, opportunities can return, and skills can be rebuilt, but time moves in one direction only. Every second that passes becomes part of your past, and no amount of regret or effort can bring it back. This is why how you use your time determines the quality of your life more than almost anything else. People often understand this intellectually, but they fail to live by it consistently. They waste time in small moments thinking it does not matter without realizing that life is built from those very moments. The way you spend your time reflects your priorities, reflects anything you say about them. You may claim that success, growth, or improvement is important to you, but your daily schedule reveals the truth. If most of your time is spent on distractions, entertainment, or unproductive habits, then those are your real priorities in practice. Time does not lie. It shows exactly what you value through your actions, not your intentions. One of the biggest challenges in managing time is the illusion of abundance. People think they have more time than they actually do. They delay important tasks, postpone goals, and assume there will always be a better moment later. This mindset creates a pattern of procrastination. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and suddenly a significant portion of life has passed without meaningful progress. The illusion of a later is one of the most dangerous traps because it feels harmless in the moment, but becomes costly over time. Another issue is distraction. Time is not only lost through inactivity, but also through constant switching between low-value activities. Social media, entertainment, random conversations, and aimless browsing consume hours without notice. Individually, these moments feel small, but collectively, they add up to a large portion of the day. The problem is not occasional relaxation. The problem is lack of control. When time is not intentionally directed, it gets absorbed by whatever is easiest and most stimulating. Using time wisely begins with awareness. Most people are not fully conscious of how they spend their hours. They underestimate distractions and overestimate productivity. Becoming aware of your time usage is the first step toward change. When you start paying attention to where your time actually goes, patterns become visible. You begin to notice how often you drift away from meaningful tasks and how much time is things that do not contribute to your goals. Once awareness is developed, the next step is intention. Time must be assigned purposefully. Instead of letting the day unfold randomly, you decide in advance what deserves your attention. This could involve setting priorities, creating structure, or simply deciding what matters most for that day. Without intention, time gets filled reactively. With intention, time becomes a tool you actively control. Another important concept in time management is discipline. Knowing what to do is not enough. You must also consistently do it. Discipline is what keeps you aligned with your priorities even when motivation fades. There will always be easier or more enjoyable alternatives competing for your attention. Discipline is the ability to choose long-term value over short-term comfort. It is what allows you to stay consistent with meaningful work instead of drifting into distraction. Procrastination is one of the most common ways time is wasted. It often appears harmless at first. You tell yourself you will start later when you feel more ready or more motivated, but waiting for the perfect moment often results in no action at all. The truth is that motivation usually follows action, not the other way around. When you begin, even imperfectly, momentum starts to build. That momentum reduces resistance and makes continuation easier. Another factor that affects time usage is energy. Not all hours of the day are equal. Your focus, motivation, and mental clarity fluctuate throughout the day. Understanding your natural energy patterns can help you use time more effectively. High energy periods are best for important tasks that require concentration, while low energy periods can be used for simpler or routine activities. Aligning tasks with energy levels increases efficiency and reduces struggle. Time management is also about elimination. You cannot add more hours to your day, but you can remove unnecessary activities. Many people try to improve productivity by adding more tools or schedules. But the real improvement often comes from removing distraction. Every activity in your life should have a purpose or be questioned. If something does not contribute to your growth, well-being, or necessary responsibility, it deserves reconsideration. Another key element is consistency. Using time wisely is not about occasional productivity bursts. It's about daily habits. Small, consistent actions have a greater long-term impact than irregular, intense efforts. One focused hour every day is more powerful than several hours of occasional work followed by long periods of inactivity. Consistency builds momentum builds results. The way you start your day also influences how you use your time. A disorganized or distracted start often leads to a scattered day. On the other hand, a structured, intentional start sets the tone for focused behavior. Early decisions often shape the rest of the day, which is why morning habits are so important. How you begin influences how you continue. Another important idea is the value of deep work. When you fully concentrate on a single task without interruption, the quality of output increases significantly. Deep focus allows you to complete complex tasks more efficiently and with better results. However, this requires protecting your time from interruptions. Every distraction breaks your mental flow, making it harder to regain focus. Time also has a psychological dimension. When you feel like you have a lot of time, urgency decreases and delay becomes more likely. When you recognize time as limited, your behavior changes. You become more selective about how you spend it. This awareness of limitation creates focus. It pushes you to prioritize what truly matters instead of getting lost in minor activities. Another important aspect is reflection. Regularly reviewing how you spend your time helps you improve. Without reflection, you repeat the same patterns without realizing their impact. By looking back at your day or week, you can identify where time was well spent and where it was wasted. This awareness allows for better decisions in the future. Time also affects your long-term identity. The habits you build with your time shape who you become. If your time is consistently spent on growth, learning, and productive actions, your identity gradually shifts toward discipline and progress. If your time is mostly spent on distractions, your identity reflects stagnation. Over time, these patterns become deeply embedded. There is also a connection between time and opportunity. Many opportunities are time sensitive. If you delay too long, they disappear. This is why hesitation can be costly. Acting at the right moment is often more important than acting perfectly. Time-sensitive decisions require awareness and readiness, not perfection. Another important factor is balance. Using time wisely does not mean working constantly without rest. Rest is essential for recovery, clarity, and long-term sustainability. However, rest should be intentional, not accidental. There's a difference between taking a planned break and losing time to distraction. True balance involves both productivity and recovery, structured in a way that supports growth. Ultimately, time is a reflection of life itself. How you spend your time determines what your life becomes. Every action, every decision, every moment contributes to the larger picture. When you take control of your time, you take control of your direction. When you waste it, you give control away. The difference between progress and stagnation often comes down to how intentionally you use the hours you are given each day. Your habits are not small actions that exist in isolation. They are the foundation of your identity and the driving force behind your long-term results. Most people underestimate habits because they feel simple and automatic. A habit is just something you do repeatedly without thinking too much about it. But that simplicity is exactly what makes habits so powerful. They bypass constant decision-making and become part of your default behavior. Over time, what you repeatedly do becomes who you are. Every person's life is shaped less by big, dramatic decisions and more by small, repeated actions. You do not become successful, disciplined, or focused in a single moment. You become those things through consistent repetition of behaviors that align with those qualities. On the other hand, failure, stagnation, or lack of progress is also rarely the result of one major mistake. It is usually the accumulation of small, repeated actions that move you away from your goals. One of the most important things to understand about habits is that they operate automatically. Once a habit is formed, it no longer requires conscious effort. This is both powerful and dangerous. It is powerful because good habits allow you to progress without constantly forcing yourself. It is dangerous because bad habits also operate on autopilot, meaning they continue even when you do not actively want them. This is why people often struggle to change. They are not just fighting behavior, they are fighting automation. Habits are built through repetition. The more you repeat an action in a similar context, the stronger the neural pathway becomes in your brain. At first, a new behavior feels uncomfortable and requires effort. You have to think about it, remind yourself, and push through resistance. But with enough repetition, it becomes easier. Eventually, it becomes automatic. This is how discipline turns into routine, and routine turns into identity. The environment plays a major role in shaping habits. Your surroundings often trigger behaviors without you realizing it. For example, if you always scroll your phone when you are bored, then boredom becomes a trigger for distraction. If you always study in a specific place, that environment becomes associated with focus. Over time, your environment trains your behavior. This means that changing your habits is not only about willpower, it is also about changing the cues around you. Another important factor is emotional reinforcement. Habits that give immediate pleasure or relief are more likely to stick. This is why habits like procrastination, overeating, or excessive entertainment are difficult to break. They provide instant satisfaction. On the other hand, habits that require effort but provide delayed rewards, such as studying, exercising, or building skills are harder to maintain. The brain naturally prefers immediate reward over long-term benefit, which creates a conflict between what feels good now and what is good later. To change habits, you must interrupt this cycle. You cannot simply rely on motivation because motivation is inconsistent. Instead, you need structure. One effective approach is to make good habits easy and bad habits harder. If something requires less effort, you are more likely to do it. If it requires more effort, you are more likely to avoid it. By changing the level of friction in your environment, you influence your behavior without relying solely on willpower. Another key idea is identity-based habits. Instead of focusing only on what you want to achieve, you focus on who you want to become. For example, instead of saying, I want to exercise, you say, I'm someone who takes care of my body. Instead of I want to study more, you say, I am a disciplined learner. This shift matters because behavior follows identity. When you believe something is part of who you are, you naturally act in alignment with it. Consistency is more important than intensity when it comes to habits. Many people try to change their lives through extreme effort for a short period of time, but this rarely lasts. Real change comes from small, consistent actions repeated over long periods. Even a small habit, if done daily, can create significant results over time. The power of habits lies in accumulation, not intensity. Tracking habits can also strengthen them. When you measure your behavior, you become more aware of it. This awareness increases accountability and helps you stay consistent. Seeing progress visually, even in small amounts, reinforces motivation. It shows you that your efforts are building something over time, even if the results are not immediately visible. Another important aspect is breaking negative habits. This is often more difficult than building new ones because negative habits are already deeply wired. The key is not just stopping the behavior, but replacing it with something else. If you simply remove a habit without substitution, the gap often gets filled with another unwanted behavior. Replacement gives your brain a new pattern to follow instead of avoid. Habits also influence your future without you realizing it. Every habit is like a vote for the type of person you are becoming. One action may not seem significant, but repeated over time, it shapes your direction. For example, choosing to read instead of scrolling once may not change your life, but repeating that choice daily builds knowledge, discipline, and focus. The accumulation of small decisions determines your long-term trajectory. There is also a strong connection between habits and self-discipline. Discipline is not just about resisting temptation. It is about building systems that reduce the need for resistance. When good habits are in place, you do not need to constantly fight yourself. The behavior becomes automatic. In this way, discipline is less about struggle and more about structure. Another important point is that habits influence your energy and mindset. Positive habits such as exercise, learning, and structured routines improve mental clarity and physical energy. Negative habits such as excessive distraction or irregular routines often lead to fatigue and lack of focus. Your daily habits directly affect how you feel and perform. Time also plays a crucial role in habit formation. Small habits may feel insignificant in the short term, but over time, their impact multiplies. This is often referred to as compounding. Just like money grows through compound interest, habits grow through repeated action. The longer you maintain a habit, the greater its impact becomes. This is why patience is essential in the process of change. It's also important to recognize that setbacks are part of habit formation. No one maintains perfect consistency. There will be days when you fall back into old patterns or fail to follow your routine. What matters is not the interruption itself, but how quickly you return. The ability to recover and continue is what determines long-term success. Social influence also affects habits. The people you spend time with shape your behavior more than you might realize. If you are surrounded by disciplined, goal-oriented individuals, you are more likely to adopt similar habits. If you are surrounded by distraction, inconsistency, those patterns can become normal to you. Your environment of people reinforces your behavior patterns. Ultimately, habits determine the direction of your life because they determine your default actions. When you are not actively thinking, your habits take over. This means your future is largely shaped by what you do when you are not consciously trying to succeed. If those automatic behaviors are aligned with growth, your progress becomes inevitable over time. If they are not, your struggle becomes continuous. The real power of habits is that they make success or failure predictable. They remove randomness from your life. Instead of relying on occasional effort, you rely on systems that operate every day. This creates stability, direction, and momentum. When your habits are aligned with your goals, progress becomes a natural outcome rather than a constant struggle. Your discipline is not something you switch on only when you feel motivated. It is the structure that determines whether your life moves forward or stays stuck. Most people misunderstand discipline because they associate it with intensity, pressure, or short bursts of extreme effort. But real discipline is not about doing something once in a powerful moment. It is about doing what is necessary repeatedly, especially when you don't feel like doing it. It's the ability to stay consistent when your emotions are not supporting you, when your energy is low, and when distractions feel more attractive than progress. At its core, discipline is self-control applied over time. It is the decision to act according to your goals instead of your feelings. Feelings change constantly. Some days you feel motivated, focused, and ready to work. Other days you feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated. If your actions depend on how you feel, your progress will always be unstable. Discipline removes that instability by creating a system where you act regardless of emotional state. This is what separates those who make consistent progress from those who rely on temporation. One of the biggest misconceptions is that disciplined people are always motivated. That is not true. They simply do not depend on motivation. They understand that motivation is a starting spark, not a sustaining force. Motivation can fit, but it cannot carry you through difficult or repetitive work. Discipline is what keeps you going when motivation disappears. It is the bridge between intention and execution. Discipline begins with small decisions. People often think discipline is about big sacrifices or extreme routines, but in reality, it is built through small, repeated choices. Waking up when your alarm rings instead of hitting snooze. Starting a task immediately instead of delaying it. Choosing focus instead of distraction. These small moments seem insignificant, but they accumulate. Each decision either strengthens your discipline or weakens it. Every time you choose comfort over responsibility, you reinforce a pattern of avoidance. Every time you choose responsibility over comfort, you strengthen your ability to act despite resistance. Over time, these patterns shape your identity. You either become someone who follows through or someone who constantly delays. Discipline is built through repetition of choice, not through occasional effort. Another important aspect of discipline is resistance. Whenever you try to do something meaningful, your mind often resists. It tries to convince you to stop, postpone, or switch to something easier. This resistance is natural. It appears because the brain prefers efficiency and comfort. But discipline is the ability to move forward despite that resistance. The stronger the task, the stronger the resistance, and therefore the stronger the discipline required. Discipline is closely connected to structure. Without structure, even strong intentions fade quickly. Structure means having clear systems for your time, energy, and actions. When your day is unstructured, your mind decides what to do in the moment, and in most cases, it chooses the easiest option. But when your day is structured, your decisions are already made in advance. You are no longer negotiating with yourself every hour. You are simply following system. One of the key enemies of discipline is procrastination. Procrastination is not laziness. It is avoidance of discomfort. It happens when a task feels difficult, overwhelming, or unpleasant. Instead of facing it, your mind seeks relief through distraction. The problem is that procrastination does not eliminate the task. It only delays it and increases pressure over time. Discipline breaks this cycle by starting action immediately, even in small steps. Another challenge is emotional dependency. Many people wait to feel ready before they act. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, or the right circumstances, but readiness is often a feeling created after action, not before it. Discipline means acting before you feel ready. It means trusting the process more than your emotion. Once you start, Momentum often carries you forward and creates the feeling you were waiting for. Consistency is one of the strongest expressions of discipline. Doing something once has little impact. Doing repeatedly over time creates transformation. The difference between average and exceptional results is not intensity but consistency. Discipline ensures that effort is not random or occasional but steady and predictable. Even small daily actions, when repeated, produce significant long-term outcomes. Discipline also requires clarity of purpose. When you are clear about why you are doing something, it becomes easier to stay committed. Without purpose, discipline feels like punishment. With purpose, discipline feels like direction. You are no longer forcing yourself to act. You are aligning your actions with something meaningful. This alignment reduces internal conflict and strengthens commitment. Another important factor is environment. Your surroundings influence your discipline more than you may realize. If your environment is full of distractions, temptations, or disorder, maintaining discipline becomes harder. If your environment supports focus, structure, and clarity, discipline becomes easier. This is why successful people often design their environment to reduce friction and increase productivity. They remove unnecessary distraction and create conditions that support their goals. Self-awareness is also a critical part of discipline. You must be able to recognize when you are slipping into avoidance or distraction. Most people operate on autopilot, unaware of how often they delay tasks or shift attention. Awareness interrupts this autopilot. Once you notice your behavior, you gain the ability to change it. Without awareness, change is impossible because you cannot correct what you do not see. Another key element is emotional control. Discipline does not mean suppressing emotions, but it does mean not being controlled by them. You can feel tired and still work. You can feel unmotivated and still take action. You can feel uncertain and still move forward. Emotional discipline is the ability to separate feeling from action. This separation is what allows consistent performance regardless of internal fluctuation. Discipline also builds trust in yourself. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, you reinforce self-trust. Over time, this creates confidence, not the superficial kind based on feeling good, but a deeper confidence based on evidence. You know you can rely on yourself. This self-trust becomes one of the most powerful foundations for long-term success. On the other hand, every time you break your own promises, even small ones, you weaken that trust. You start to doubt your ability to stay consistent. This internal doubt affects motivation, focus, and decision-making. Discipline protects you from this erosion by keeping your actions aligned with your intentions. Another important aspect of discipline is delayed gratification. This means choosing long-term benefit over short-term comfort. It is one of the most difficult but essential skills for success. The mind naturally prefers immediate reward. Discipline trains you to resist that impulse and invest in future outcomes instead. Whether it is studying instead of entertainment, working instead of resting, or saving instead of spending, delayed gratification is at the core of progress. Discipline also improves clarity. When your actions are consistent, your life becomes more organized. You waste less time deciding what to do next because your priorities are already defined. This reduces mental clutter and increases focus. A disciplined life is not chaotic. It is structured and predictable. Another benefit of discipline is resilience. Life will always present challenges, setbacks, and unexpected changes. Without discipline, these disruptions can easily derail progress. With discipline, you remain stable. You adjust, but you do not stop. You continue moving forward, even when circumstances are not ideal. This resilience is what keeps long-term goals alive. It is also important to understand that discipline is not about perfection. No one is perfectly disciplined all the time. There will be moments of weakness, distraction, and inconsistency. What matters is the overall direction, not isolated failures. Discipline is about returning to your standards quickly after deviation, not about never falling. Over time, discipline becomes part of your identity. You stop seeing it as something you do and start seeing it as who you are. Instead of saying, I need to be disciplined, you begin to act as a disciplined person naturally. This identity shift is powerful because behavior follows identity more easily than willpower. Ultimately, discipline is the foundation that supports every other area of growth. Without it, goals remain ideas. With it, ideas become reality. It is the force that turns intention into execution and results. It does not eliminate difficulty, but it ensures progress despite difficulty. It is the difference between potential and achievement, between planning and doing, between thinking and becoming. Your words carry weight far beyond the moment you speak them. Most people treat communication as something temporary, just sounds exchanged in a conversation that disappear as soon as they are said. But in reality, every word you speak contributes to your identity, your relationships, and your future. Communication is not just about expressing thoughts. It's about shaping perception. The way you speak determines how others see you. But even more importantly, it determines how you begin to see yourself. Clarity in communication is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop. Well, when your thoughts are clear, your words become clear. When your words are clear, your intentions become clear. And when your intentions are clear, your actions become aligned. Many problems in life are not caused by lack of ability, but by lack of clarity. People often know what they want deep down, but they fail to express it properly, either to themselves or to others. This lack of expression creates confusion, delay, and misdirection. Speaking clearly starts with thinking clearly. If your thoughts are scattered, your speech will reflect that. You may struggle to explain yourself, repeat ideas without structure, or speak in a way that leaves others confused. This is why communication is deeply connected to mental organization. When your mind is disciplined, your speech becomes structured. Structure. When your mind is chaotic, your speech becomes unclear. Improving communication, therefore, begins internally, not externally. One of the biggest barriers to clear communication is hesitation. People often know what they want to say, but struggle to say it confidently. They fear being judged, misunderstood, or rejected. This fear leads to hesitation, and hesitation weakens the impact of your message. When you speak with uncertainty, even correct ideas lose their strength. On the other hand, when you speak with clarity and confidence, even simple ideas become powerful. Another important aspect of communication, simplicity. Many people believe that complex language makes them sound smarter. But in reality, simplicity creates understanding. The goal of communication is not to impress, it is to connect. If your message is too complicated, it loses its impact. Clear communication removes unnecessary complexity and focuses on the core idea. It prioritizes understanding over appearance. Listening is just as important as speaking. Many communication problems arise, not because people cannot speak, but because they do not listen properly. When you listen carefully, you gain better understanding, which allows you to respond more accurately. Listening is not passive, it is active engagement. It requires focus, patience, and attention. Without listening, communication becomes one-sided and incomplete. Miscommunication often leads to unnecessary conflict. Many disagreements are not caused by real differences, but by misunderstanding. When words are unclear or emotions are involved, messages get distorted. A small misunderstanding can escalate into a larger problem simply because neither side took the time to clarify. This is why clear communication is essential for maintaining healthy relationships. It reduces assumptions and increases understanding. Tone also plays a major role in communication. The same words can have completely different effects depending on how they are spoken. A calm and respectful tone can make even difficult messages easier to accept, while a harsh or aggressive tone can create resistance, even if the message is correct. Tone reflects emotional control. When you control your tone, you control the emotional impact of your words. Another key element is timing. Knowing when to speak is just as important as knowing what to say. Even the right message can be ineffective if delivered at the wrong time. Sometimes people speak too quickly without considering whether the other person is ready to listen. Effective communication involves awareness of context, mood, and situation. Timing ensures that your message is received in the best possible way. Honesty is another foundation of strong communication. When your words are honest, they build trust. When they are inconsistent or misleading, they create doubt. Trust is built over time through repeated honesty. Even small lies or exaggerations can weaken credibility. Clear communication requires alignment between what you think, what you say, and what you do. Another important factor is emotional control. When emotions are high, communication often becomes reactive. People say things they do not mean, exaggerate their feelings, or misunderstand others more easily. Learning to pause before speaking allows you to regulate your emotions. This pause creates space between feeling and expression, helping you respond more thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Communication also reflects respect. When you communicate clearly, you show respect for the other person's time and understanding. You make it easier for them to follow your thoughts and respond appropriately. Poor communication, on the other hand, creates confusion and frustration. Respected communication is not just about politeness. It is about effort and clarity. Confidence plays a major role in how your message is received. Confident communication does not mean being loud or aggressive. It means being certain of what you are saying and expressing it without unnecessary doubt. Confidence comes from preparation and understanding. When you know what you are talking about, your words naturally become stronger. Another important aspect is adaptability. Different situations require different communication styles. Speaking to a friend is different from speaking in a professional setting. Understanding your audience helps you adjust your tone, language, and approach. Adaptability makes communication more effective because it ensures your message fits the context. Nonverbal communication is also powerful. Your body language, facial expressions, and eye contact all contribute to how your message is interpreted. Even if your words are correct, your nonverbal signals change their meaning. For example, avoiding eye contact may signal uncertainty, while open posture can signal confidence. Effective communication requires alignment between verbal and nonverbal cues. Another important element is feedback. Communication is not one-directional. It involves exchange. Paying attention to how others respond helps you understand whether your message is being received correctly. Feedback allows you to adjust and improve your communication in real time. Without feedback, misunderstandings are more likely to persist. Clarity in communication also improves decision-making. When you are able to express your thoughts clearly, it becomes easier to analyze them. Writing or speaking your ideas helps organize them. This process often reveals gaps in thinking or areas that need improvement. Communication is therefore not just a way to express ideas, but also a way to refine them. Another benefit of strong communication is influence. People are naturally drawn to those who can express themselves clearly and confidently. Whether in personal relationships or professional environments, communication plays a key role in leadership and trust. Those who communicate well are often seen as more capable, even before they demonstrate their skills. Miscommunication, on the other hand, creates distance. It leads to confusion, frustration, and misunderstandings that can damage relationships over time. Many conflicts could be avoided entirely with clearer expression and better listening. Communication is often the bridge between intention and understanding, and when that bridge is weak, problems arise. Another important aspect is self-expression. Communication is not just about others. It is also about understanding yourself. When you articulate your thoughts, you gain clarity about your own feelings and beliefs. This self-awareness helps you make better decisions and understand your direction in life more clearly. Over time, strong communication becomes a habit. You begin to think before you speak, choose your words carefully, and express yourself with intention. This habit improves your relationships, your confidence, and your ability to navigate different situations. Communication becomes less about effort and more about natural expression. Ultimately, communication is the bridge between thought and reality. Your ideas remain internal until you express them. Your intentions remain unclear until you communicate. Your impact on the world depends largely on how effectively you can translate your thoughts into words and actions that others can understand. When communication is clear, everything else becomes easier. Relationships, opportunity, decisions, and personal growth all improve through the simple but powerful act of expressing yourself with clarity, honesty, and intention. Your consistency is the invisible force that determines whether your efforts lead to real results or disappear into unfinished intentions. Many people misunderstand success and assume it comes from occasional bursts of motivation, sudden inspiration, or intense short-term effort. But real progress is not built in moments of excitement. It is built in moments of repetition. What you do consistently, even when it feels ordinary or unimportant, shapes your future far more than what you do occasionally with intensity. Consistency is what connects your present actions to your future outcomes. Without it, even the best plans remain incomplete. You may start something with strong energy, whether it's a goal, a habit, a project, or a personal change. But if that effort is not repeated regularly, it loses momentum and eventually fades. Many people are not lacking ability or potential, they are lacking continuity. They start, but they do not sustain. One of the reasons consistency is difficult is because progress is often slow in the beginning. When you start something new, the results are not immediately visible. You put in effort, but your changes are small and easy to overlook. This creates doubt. You begin to question whether your actions are making a difference. This is where most people give up, not because the path is wrong, but because the early stage does not show enough reward. Consistency requires the ability to continue even when results are not yet visible. The human mind naturally prefers quick rewards. It wants immediate feedback. That effort is paying off. When that feedback is missing, motivation weakens. This is why consistency cannot depend on motivation alone. Motivation fluctuates. It rises and falls depending on mood, environment, and circumstances. If you rely on motivation, your actions will be inconsistent. Discipline and structure are what sustain consistency when motivation is absent. Another challenge to consistency is distraction. It is easy to start something, but harder to maintain focus on it over time. New ideas, new interests, and new temptations constantly appear, pulling attention away from existing commitments. Without consistency, you move from one thing to another without completing anything deeply. This creates a pattern of unfinished efforts where potential is always present but never fully realized. Consistency also requires patience. Many people abandon their efforts because they expect fast transformation. They believe that effort should quickly lead to visible success. But most meaningful results take time to build. Skills, habits, relationships, and achievements all develop gradually. Consistency is the ability to trust the process even when progress feels slow. One of the most powerful aspects of consistency is compounding. Small actions, when repeated over time, accumulate into significant results. A single action may seem insignificant, but when repeated daily, weekly, or monthly, it creates a pattern that leads to transformation. This is why consistency is often more powerful than intensity. Intensity creates short spikes of progress, but consistency builds long-term change. Consistency also builds identity. The more repeatedly you perform a behavior, the more it becomes part of who you are. If you consistently act with discipline, you begin to see yourself as disciplined. If you consistently avoid effort, you begin to see yourself as inconsistent. Identity is not formed by what you intend to do. It is formed by what you repeatedly do. Over time, your habits become your self-image. Another important aspect of consistency is reliability. When you are consistent, people begin to trust your actions. They know what to expect from you. This builds credibility in both personal and professional life. Inconsistency, on the other hand, creates uncertainty. People cannot rely on your word or your effort because your behavior changes frequently. Consistency strengthens trust because it removes unpredictability. Consistency also reduces decision fatigue. When your actions are structured and repeated, you do not have to constantly decide what to do next. Your habits guide your behavior automatically. This saves mental energy and allows you to focus on improvement rather than constant decision-making. Without consistency, every day feels like starting over. With consistency, you build on what already exists. Another benefit of consistency is momentum. When you perform an action repeatedly, it becomes easier over time. The initial resistance decreases and the process becomes more natural. This momentum makes continued effort less difficult. The hardest part is often starting, but consistency turns starting into continuation. Once momentum is established, progress becomes smoother. Inconsistency, on the other hand, resets progress repeatedly. Every time you stop and restart, you lose momentum and have to rebuild it. This creates frustration and slows down growth. Even if the total effort is similar, inconsistent effort produces weaker results because it lacks continuity. Consistency also improves skill development. Whether it's learning, practicing, or improving in any area, repetition is essential. Skills are not built through occasional effort. They are built through repeated exposure and practice. Each repetition strengthens understanding and improves performance. Without consistency, skill development remains shallow and incomplete. Another important factor is emotional resistance. On some days, you will not feel like continuing. You may feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. Consistency means continuing despite these emotional fluctuations. It is the ability to separate action from feeling. You do not wait for perfect conditions. You act regardless of them. Environment also plays a role in consistency. If your environment supports your goals, consistency becomes easier. If it constantly distracts or disrupts you, maintaining consistency becomes harder. Designing your environment to support your habits reduces friction and helps sustain long-term behavior. Another key element is accountability. When you are accountable to yourself or others, consistency increases. Tracking progress, setting expectations, or sharing goals creates a sense of responsibility. This responsibility encourages follow-through even when motivation is low. Consistency also creates confidence. When you repeatedly follow through on your actions, you begin to trust yourself. You know that you can rely on your own behavior. This self-trust becomes the foundation for confidence. Inconsistent behavior, on the other hand, weakens self-belief because you cannot predict your own follow-through. Another important idea is that consistency is more about direction than perfection. You do not need to perform perfectly every time. What matters is continuing in the same direction over time. Small mistakes or interruptions do not break consistency. Stopping completely does. The goal is progress, not perfection. There's also a connection between consistency and discipline. Discipline is what enables consistency when motivation fades. Without discipline, consistency cannot exist because behavior would depend entirely on mood. Discipline provides structure, while consistency provides repetition. Together, they create long-term results. Consistency also affects mindset. When you consistently engage in positive actions, your thinking gradually improves. You begin to see yourself as capable of growth and improvement. On the other hand, inconsistency creates doubt and instability in thinking. Your mindset reflects your patterns of behavior. Another important aspect is that consistency simplifies life. Instead of constantly changing direction or restarting efforts, you follow a steady path. This reduces confusion and creates clarity. You know what you are working toward and how you are progressing. Stability replaces chaos. Ultimately, consistency is what turns effort into achievement. Without it, potential remains unused. With it, even small actions become powerful over time. It is not the intensity of a single moment that defines success, but the repetition of many small moments aligned in the same direction. When consistency becomes a habit, progress stops being occasional and becomes inevitable. Your discipline is the foundation that connects everything in your life together. Without it, your goals remain ideas, your plans remain intentions, and your potential remains unused. Discipline is not about being perfect or never making mistakes. It is about maintaining control over your actions, even when emotions, distractions, or difficulties try to pull you away from what you know you should be doing. It is the ability to stay aligned with your purpose when comfort, laziness, or doubt try to redirect you. Many people misunderstand discipline and think it is something reserved for a few highly motivated individuals. In reality, discipline is not a personality trait you are born with. It's a skill you build through repeated decision. Every time you choose effort over comfort, focus over distraction, and responsibility over avoidance, you strengthen your discipline. Every time you do the opposite, you weaken it. Over time, these small choices accumulate and shape your identity. One of the most important truths about discipline is that it is not emotional. It does not depend on how you feel in the moment. Feelings are temporary and unpredictable. Some days you feel motivated, focused, and ready to act. Other days you feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated. If your actions depend on feelings, your life will always be inconsistent. Discipline removes this instability by creating a standard of behavior that does not change based on mood. Discipline begins in small moments. It is not built in grand gestures or rare achievements, but in ordinary daily decisions. Waking up when you plan instead of delaying. Starting a task immediately instead of postponing it. Choosing to continue when you feel like stopping. These small actions seem insignificant on their own, but they define your direction over time. A disciplined life is simply the result of many small disciplined choices repeated consistently. One of the biggest enemies of discipline is comfort. Comfort is attractive because it provides immediate relief, tells you to avoid difficulty, to choose ease, to delay effort. But while comfort feels good in the short term, it often leads to long-term stagnation. Discipline requires you to step outside of comfort repeatedly. Growth rarely happens in comfortable situations. It happens when you push yourself into discomfort and stay there long enough to improve. Another challenge to discipline is distraction. Modern life is filled with constant interruptions competing for your attention. Social media, entertainment, conversations, and notifications are designed to pull you away from focus. Without discipline, it becomes easy to drift from one distraction to another without making real progress. Discipline is what allows you to resist these distractions and stay committed to what matters. Discipline also requires delayed gratification. This means choosing long-term benefit over short-term pleasure. Instead of doing what feels good immediately, you do what benefits you later. This is one of the hardest skills to develop because the brain naturally prefers immediate rewards. But every meaningful achievement in life requires the ability to delay satisfaction. Whether it is studying instead of entertainment, working instead of relaxing, or saving instead of spending, discipline always involves this trade-off. Another important aspect of discipline is consistency. Discipline is not about occasional effort. It is about repeated effort. Doing something once does not change your life. Doing it repeatedly does. Discipline ensures that your actions are not random, but structured and continuous. It transforms effort into habit and habit into identity. Emotional control is also a key part of discipline. Many actions are influenced by emotions like frustration, boredom, fear, or excitement. Without discipline, these emotions dictate behavior. You act based on how you feel rather than what you know is right. Discipline allows you to separate emotion from action. You may feel unmotivated, but you still act. You may feel uncomfortable, but you still continue. This separation is what creates stability in your behavior. Another critical element is responsibility. Discipline means taking ownership of your actions instead of blaming circumstances. When something goes wrong, a disciplined mindset asks what can be improved instead of focusing on external excuses. This shift in thinking creates control. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming an active participant in shaping your outcomes. Discipline also builds self-respect. Every time you follow through on a commitment you made to yourself, you reinforce trust in your own actions. You begin to see yourself as someone who can be relied upon. This self-trust is powerful because it influences how you approach challenges. When you trust yourself, you act with confidence. When you break your own promises repeatedly, you begin to doubt your ability to follow through. Another important aspect is structure. Discipline thrives and struggles in chaos. When your day is unstructured, your decisions are constantly influenced by impulses and distractions. When your day is structured, your actions are guided by a plan. Structure reduces decision fatigue and makes it easier to stay consistent with your goals. It removes uncertainty and replaces it with direction. Discipline also requires awareness. You cannot improve what you are not aware of. Many people operate on autopilot, repeating the same patterns without noticing them. Awareness allows you to identify when you are drifting away from your goals. Once you are aware, you can correct your behavior. Without awareness, change is impossible because you cannot adjust what you do not recognize. Another challenge is resistance. Whenever you try to do something meaningful, resistance appears in the form of hesitation, excuses, or avoidance. This resistance is normal. It is the mind's way of trying to preserve comfort. Discipline is the ability to move forward despite this resistance. The stronger the resistance, the more important the discipline becomes. Discipline also improves focus. When you are disciplined, you are less likely to switch between tasks or get distracted. You stay committed to one task for longer periods, which improves the quality of your work. Focus and discipline reinforce each other. The more disciplined you are, the easier it becomes to focus. The more focused you are, the more disciplined your actions become. Another important benefit of discipline is momentum. Once you begin acting consistently, progress becomes easier. The initial effort is often the hardest part, but discipline helps you push through that resistance. Once momentum builds, actions start to feel more natural and less forced. This momentum carries you forward and reduces the effort required to continue. Discipline also plays a major role in long-term success. Success is not the result of one major action, but the accumulation of many small disciplined actions over time. Each day, you either move closer to your goals or further away from them based on your discipline. There is no neutral position. You are always either progressing or regressing. Another important aspect is resilience. Life will always present challenges, setbacks, and unexpected difficulties. Without discipline, these obstacles can easily disrupt your progress. With discipline, you remain steady. You adapt, adjust, and continue moving forward despite challenges. This resilience is what allows long-term goals to survive temporary difficulties. Discipline also shapes identity. Over time, repeated disciplined actions define who you become. If you consistently act with discipline, you begin to see yourself as a disciplined person. This identity reinforces future behavior. Instead of forcing yourself to act a certain way, you naturally align with that identity. It is also important to understand that discipline is not about perfection. No one maintains perfect discipline all the time. There will be moments of weakness, distraction, or failure. What matters is not the absence of mistakes, but the ability to return to discipline after deviation. The quicker you return, the stronger your discipline becomes. Ultimately, discipline is the foundation that supports every meaningful achievement. Without it, potential remains unused and goals remain unfinished. With it, even ordinary actions become powerful over time. It is the force that turns intention into execution and execution into results.